Joining us now is Jennifer Weisner, a sex therapist. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Is there an appropriate age to kind of start this conversation about harassment or sexual assault with your kids?
There is, and I don't think we conceptualize it that way. It's what we need to start doing is talking about our kids about sex and sexuality and their bodies earlier, before we can even ever get to that topic of sexual assault. They really need to understand personal space, privacy, boundaries, before we ever get to those conversations. And so if we've built that foundation, then we can move on to start talking about how we treat others equitably and fairly.
And you know, as you mentioned, for a child who may not even understand what sexual contact is yet, they're young. How do we teach them those topics of consent?
It's one of those things that's so squeamish for parents to talk about, and that's what I do in my workshops, is help educate them on that. But I think starting with talking about the value that their own body has, and that their body belongs to them and everybody else's body belongs to them, and how do we ask permission. It starts from the age of 2 when we speak about permission, about hugging your friend or jumping on them, and how we just get them to understand about personal space.
A lot of people talk about, we shouldn't teach girls how to avoid rape. We should be talking to the boys how not to rape. How do you even begin that conversation?
I think I'm always going to keep bringing it back to, we don't do a good job in our culture about teaching about sexuality. If kids aren't learning from a young age about their own bodies, they're not going to know how to respect someone else's body. And the last thing we want to do is have women and young girls living in fear of men. We want them all to be able to understand each other, their own sexuality, and then also understand the sexuality of other people and other genders.
Obviously, we saw those numbers. These numbers are still growing, and at times it feels like, are we ever going to find a solution to this? Are you hopeful, or do you have faith that we can fix this problem?
I am actually really hopeful about it, and over 500 people have come through my workshops now to help parents feel competent talking about this with their kids, and so I feel really pleased at how that's going in our state. And I think the more that we can normalize this discussion with our children and with other parents, we're gonna get there. I really am hopeful.
We're getting a lot of conversation here on Facebook Live too. Deborah saying maybe more women are reporting it now that it doesn't have the stigma it once did. Has the stigma gone down a little bit?
I would agree with that. I think there's also that joining, where other women are hearing other women's stories, and it propels them to join too and say, I feel a little bit more connected with other women in talking about this.
That's certainly what the Me Too movement was about,
yes, exactly.
As well, of course.
That unified voice and support, I think it then allows women to feel that they have a place to talk about this, that there's a little bit more safety than there was before.
Back to the next generation, is it age dependent? When do we start talking about this? What age, or is that a case-by-case basis kind of thing?
Oh no, in the womb, and I joke about that, but truly, and in the womb means parents need to start talking about this with each other. What are their values around sexuality? What do we want to impart to our children? Values are the one thing that parents can give their kids that nobody else can. Schools help provide some of that information, but parents need to hit that ball out of the park at home and add in their values around sexuality. So age 2 on up, I have some great resources if we want to talk about those later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of later, we're going to continue this conversation on Facebook Live, on our Facebook pages during the commercial break.
Great.
Thank you.